This following quote is from In Search of the Miraculous, page 225. So this is by Ouspensky. Rules are the chief and the first help that they get from the work. Rules pursue a definite aim to make them behave as they would behave if they were. That is, if they remembered themselves and realised how they ought to behave with people outside the work, to people in the work, and to the teacher. If they remembered themselves and realised this, rules would not be necessary for them. At the beginning of the work, rules are indispensable, although they can never be easy, pleasant, or comfortable. Rules are the alarm clocks which wake the sleeping man. As a person who's never really liked rules, and I like to bend the rules or break the rules, don't really like being told what to do, this is quite difficult for me. I don't want to follow rules. I want to be free to do what I want, when I want, wherever I want, with whom I want, blah, 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 blah. But I do understand rules are there. I do realise that rules are there to help society in certain ways. Okay, they're a bit like what I said, Gurdjieff said before, it's all a lunatic asylum that we live in, and maybe the rules that the outside world rules by is all a bit crazy, and that's why I rebel against them. And I probably rebelled against them because I've grown up with people, that peers and teachers or family, that I think, don't like your rules, you're only saying them to get what you want, and it's not to make everything better for everybody. It's normally selfish rules or whatever. So when I came to the Gurdjieff work, and many other disciplines, to be honest, I always found the rules rather difficult. But I do see how they are important in doing the work. It's different kind of rules that are coming along. As Ouspensky says here, these rules in the work are to help you with how you deal with other people, whether they're in the work or not. These rules are here to help you keep working on yourself. And what else was it he said that I was going to say? You know, these rules are necessary to help us remember ourselves. And when we're remembering ourselves, we're hopefully making the work happen. I've always been a real big believer in free will. I believe that's why we have free will, to do what we want. And I've said before in other shows about how our conscience is what we should be listening to. And sometimes with our free will, we don't listen to our conscience because we've got free will to do what we want. And we might have the conscience niggling at us when we're doing something that's wrong, but we've got the free will to choose and do what we like. Throughout my life, I've been studying theology and religions, and I've had so many people coming up to me and saying, well, why does God let so much injustice? Why does God let people get hurt? Why does God let wars happen, you know, etc., etc.? And the reason God lets them happen is because God stepped away from all this. He gave us free will to do what we want. Free will to choose if we want to go to war, free will to choose if we want to, I don't know, push that person over, free will to say what we want, free will to think what we want, to be what we want. If God intervened and stopped us doing the bad things that people do, or we do, individuals do, then it's no longer free will. That's God being a dictator, and, you know, becomes a tyranny instead. You know, our all loving, all embracing endlessness, as Gurdjieff calls him, gave us free will to choose what we want to be, to choose what we want to do. Free will to go ahead with our lives and screw them up, make a mess of them, dwell in our suffering that we create for ourselves, because they're not given to us by God or his endlessness. Most sufferings are created by, well, all sufferings created by ourselves. All the injustices in this world are done by humans who decided to do it themselves, and God's not going to intervene, because if he does, he's a dictator. And I don't want a dictator for a divine source. We want a divine source that's all loving and all encompassing. So we have this free will to go ahead with ourselves and do as we like. We have the free will to choose to follow this path or not. We have the free will to go and dabble in something else. We have the free will to come and go between different traditions and different faiths and different beliefs and such like. So I found some quotes that might deal with free will, and most of them are from views from the real world. So starting from page 246, and this goes on throughout this chapter, so I might forget to say the pages. So Gurdjieff is talking. Free will is the function of the real I, of him who we call the master. He who has a master has will. He who has not has no will. So we think we've got free will, but actually we are kind of led along our path, not the sacred spiritual path that we're following, but just living in this life. We think we're doing things, we think we make our own choices, we think, I've decided to do that, when actually we've probably been manipulated into it in some way or other. We think we're free, but we're not. And that's what Gurdjieff's trying to explain to us. So the only person that really has free will is someone who's developed themselves. What is ordinarily called will is an adjustment between willingness and unwillingness. For instance, the mind wants something and the feeling does not want it. An ordinary man is ruled now by the mind, now by the feeling, now by the body. And again, as Gurdjieff said in other quotes in his books, and Ouspensky reminds us, we think we know what we want. We know what we want now, but tomorrow we'll want something else. We make plans for Thursday. Thursday comes, and we don't want to do them plans. So our will's all over the place. It's not decided for us. We just chop and change, and other people chop and change as well. And they, you make an arrangement to see a friend next week, and then they can't do it on the day. So things are changing. It's all, everyone's got the free will to do what they want, but it's not really free will. We're manipulated into going and finding jobs. We think we've got the free will to choose the job we want, but we go looking for the job we want, and you go for job interviews and all over other places. You don't often get the job that you want. You end up with a job that's suitable, apt, ideal for you at that time. We never really get what we want, even though we think we've got the free will to choose it for ourselves. And he goes on to say, Gurdjieff, choice of action is only possible if a man is free inside. And obviously we are caught up with everything. I keep saying obviously, I think I might have said that in the last show as well, lots. Obviously this and obviously that. But then I suppose when we're waking up, we're beginning to see what's obvious and what isn't. Anyway, what was the quote? We think we have the choice, and we think that we're making our choices, and we're not. We're being manipulated into making choices. Very rarely are the choices we made our own real decision. Very rarely. But a developed man or woman is so developed that they can see what is right for them and the rest of humanity, and their work with the divine source. Once again, this is all about becoming part of the harmonious mechanical workings of the cosmos, and that's what a developed person would be taking part in, not in the lunatic asylum that's going on around us. Instead, we'll be part of the whole, not the outside world. And he goes on to say, so we're in the page 266 here of views from the real world. Liberation leads to liberation. The meaning by liberation is meant the liberation which is the aim of all schools, all religions, and at all times. This liberation can indeed be very great. All men desire it and strive after it. But it cannot be attained without the first liberation, a lesser liberation. The great liberation is liberation from influences outside us. The lesser liberation is liberations from influences within us. Only a man who has already become free of inner influences falls under external influences. And this comes back to external influences from the outside world, where, like he's just talked about schools, work, family, blah, blah, blah. They're one kind of outer influence, which might not necessarily be helping us with our development, but we get caught up in it all because we're living in a lunatic asylum. Then when we're developing ourselves, if we can work on ourselves and harmonize ourselves and have all our inner insides developed, we become attuned to the cosmic harmony and the workings of the cosmic world, and we become attuned to the divine source, and then we start getting influences from that. And that's what we're trying to aim at, so that we're working with the divine, with the cosmic workings of the universe, so we can be part of that harmonious development that's going on, not just in us, but in the whole universe and the whole cosmos and the whole of everything. So who do you want to be influenced by? Outside forces of this planet, or day-to-day living that most people go through, or the outside influences coming from his divine source? So he continues with some advice. I would advise you to try freeing yourselves, and to do so without unnecessary theorizing, by simple reasoning, active reasoning with yourselves. We have many independent enemies, but the chief and most active are vanity and self-love. Please see my show on, is it Mr. Vanity and Mrs. Self-Love? Anyway, I have done a show on that a few months back. Very good. Maybe I'll try and remember to stick a link to it. I'm not saying very good, my show's very good, but very good on the quotes that are in it. Sorry, that sounded really egotistical. Very good what quotes Gurdjieff said I've put in that show. All about vanity and self-love. So Gurdjieff continues. One teaching even calls them representatives and messengers of the devil himself. Are you a representative and a messenger of the devil, or a representative and a devil of your angel? Both work in us. We have the devil and the angel inside us, and it's which one we're listening to as we go forth. Again, that's not us deciding, that's not our own free will, that's us being influenced. And then C.S. Knott writes a few quotes about this, and I do love C.S. Knott's books. Free will is not to be had for the asking, nor can it be bought in a shop. Impartial action is the basis of inner freedom, the first step towards free will. So we need to work on our impartiality in our development, our impartiality of how we look at ourselves, how we look at life, how we get involved with everything that's going on around us, being impartial. I'm pretty sure I've done a show on that as well. And Knott continues, the greater freedom is the liberation of ourselves from outside influences, the lesser from influences within us. So influences coming from outside, coming from inside, to disrupt what we're trying to do with ourselves. And these influences make our decisions for us. Are we listening to our inner self, or the outer things going on? And if we are listening to the things that are the outer ones, is it just the outside world, or is it the divine source? Is God whispering into your ear, or is it the government's, what do they call it, voice to mind technology? Watch out for that as well. Blessings to you all. Peace and out.